All right, everyone. Good evening. Let's call the meeting to order. Let's have a pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I know. Staff. I'm just doing roll call. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Any objections for that being roll call? Thank you. Also online, I see, do I see a city attorney?
And a city planner.
Okay. So that means John Clark's on. And
Nick Ward-Willis.
Nick, very good. Okay. So we've got public comment. Let's start that up. So there are 3 public hearings this evening, and so if you have comments on any of the public hearings, please first wait for those and restrict any public comments to any other topics. So the 3 public hearings you should wait for are one concerning accessory apartments, one concerning self-storage parking requirements, ever exciting, and one concerning off-street parking adjacent to non-residential districts. So if you have comments on any of those 3, just wait and wait for the public hearing. So let me, with that, open up any other public comments on any other topic if you've got something, and we'll start with those who are on the sign-up sheet. So let me start with Stowe Boyd. Welcome, Stowe.
Stowe Boyd, among other things, the chair of the Main Street Access Committee. But here I'm talking about ADUs. I wanted to just put my support behind it. I've done a lot of research in the area. I've written about it a bunch of times. I wrote a thing for the chronogram The River not too long ago. I think it's in the best interest of the city to consider.
Mary, we're on the. This is a public hearing topic.
Oh, so I should wait?
Yeah.
All right, no problem.
I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Okay. Yeah, it won't be long.
That's fine.
Okay. So Jody McCredo, and on some topic other than, okay, thanks, Jody. Welcome.
Hi, guys. So, Jody McCredo, Ward 3, Beacon. As I'm pretty sure all of you know, there is a subdivision across the street from me on the planning board agenda. It's been discussed at the planning board a couple of times, and I know that it's been discussed here. I've sent you guys some emails about it and about zoning. Obviously, when I spoke about zoning, it was not about zoning for this particular project. I realize that it is too late to do anything about that. I have, however, been talking about these zoning issues for years. I've brought up blocks like Goodrich Street in Ward 4, parts of Overlook Avenue in Ward 3. There are certain areas that are zoned for density, that are built for density, and there are certain areas that aren't. And it is just not appropriate to have such low restrictive density in an area that has narrow streets, that does not have sidewalks, that does not, it's not built for density. It doesn't have the room for the cars, it doesn't have the room for the people. I urge you to take another look at the zoning and not just look at a map, but really drive around these places and look at the actual neighborhoods and look at what these places look like and what they would look like and what life would be like for the people that live there if they were actually built out to maximum density, because we already have so many streets in Beacon where you can't drive without zigzagging around cars, and it's difficult for trucks to get past, and neighbors can't park in front of their house if the person across from them is parked in front of their house, and it's very dangerous for children to walk and ride their bikes because there's just no room to go. So we really need to take a look at that because our zoning is not right. Aside from that, what I was told when I was on council is that we can't spot zone certain areas. So obviously there are going to be issues with one property that you won't have with another property within a certain area, but zoning is broad, and it's up to the planning board to look at each specific area and each specific development and use their own judgment and make a decision. And it is in our code that the planning board has discretion whether or not to approve a subdivision, whether or not to approve a private road, whether or not to approve many of the things that are before the planning board on this particular subdevelopment. It was stated at a council meeting, actually, when George brought up his idea, which, thank you, George, I think that's a great idea for additional scrutiny for subdivisions of this size. It was stated that developers have an as-of-right ability to build what they're zoned for. It was stated repeatedly to us in great frustration by the chair of the planning board at the planning board meeting that developers have an as-of-right to build what things are zoned for. And they're not taking into account the fact that there isn't any frontage, that there's steep slopes, that there's bedrock, that there's an endangered species, that there's all these other things. We were just left with the impression that, well, it's zoned for it, there's nothing we can do. And if that's the case, I don't understand the purpose of the planning board, and I don't understand the purpose of public hearings, and I don't understand why we go through this dog and pony show if there's nothing that we can do about it. So I would like the planning board to have some teeth. I would like the planning board to be aware of what teeth they have, and I would like an understanding of why we tend to bend over backwards and figure out ways to get developers what they want, instead of saying what's best for the community, what's best for the people that live there, what's best for the city as a whole, because that should be our priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Clark Gebman, and again, not on one of the three topics.
Sure. Good evening. So I'd like to go back to the city as a construction corporation thought for a minute. I think that the city currently has about maybe $25 million worth of construction contemplated or underway. Pick a number I picked up, may not be close enough. When I looked at the, I was really happy to see the city when they did the dam thing up there on the mountain peak, you know, and I was happy to see it was a prominent, one of the major international engineering firms. Oh, really cool, blah, 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 blah. And I looked close, and it said, don't ask us any questions. If you want to bid, you got to go to the site and attend the meeting, which is like the worst thing to do if you're asking the construction community to take an interest in your product that you seek, and to be able to sit 1,000 miles away, bid it up, send it out to Hong Kong and make sure it's good, blah, blah, whatever the case may be. But the dialogue between the potential contractor and the engineer is critical to getting that prices from all over the Northeast from potential company. We got two bidders. When we look at the architectural contract for the firehouse, did we check off the box that says do some value engineering? No, we're building the Taj Mahal, okay, probably $5 million more than it should actually cost if you built it incrementally and properly and strategically. But there's not one iota of strategem that's been presented. One of the council members, during the approval, you paid the design, but you didn't even know what the design was. One council member said, can we put a second floor on? You know, I mean, you have no idea what the finishes are. You have no idea what the line items cost those finishes. And I didn't see, maybe it was there, but when I saw a blank spot in the thing that's about the equipment cost, and it was blank, whatever it is, the point is, this is too much money for basically a council that never received one opposition vote. That really should be paid. At this stage, if the city is going to engage in millions of dollars consultants a year, then pay the citizens $25,000, $50,000 a piece to put an elected mayor that cares about his income, and eliminate half the consultants, because you have a cadre of people who have the confidence and intelligence to deliver the services that you need, as if you're just a small corporation. Because you're missing the mark by tons and tons of money. And the citizens of this city should be aware. But then again, you had no opposition, so you get a government you deserve. That's what they say. I'm as much as bald as anybody.
Thank you. Reuben Sibbons.
Good evening. I just want to take this opportunity to announce a couple of events that are happening with I Am Beacon in the city. This Sunday, September 25th, we're going to have our 11th annual I Run Beacon, which takes place at Memorial Park. It's already currently going on virtually, and it'll be back in person for the first time in 2 years. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this event, this is responsible for our Making a Difference scholarship that we have with the City of Beacon High School. We award a graduating senior a scholarship every year. To date, we have awarded $31,000 to a graduating senior in Beacon High School. We invite everyone to join us, and it's always the morning of Spirit Beacon Day. So it's a day to wake up, get out there, get some exercise, go home, shower, and then come back out to Main Street. The second event that I'm very proud to announce is I Am Beacon has turned 10 this year. So we're going to celebrate with a gala. On October 6th, we'll be having a gala at the Roundhouse in Beacon from 6 to 9. We will use the night to celebrate all we have accomplished throughout the years collectively, and we'd love to have everyone in the community who has engaged in our events, volunteered with us, donated, given their thoughts, feedbacks, and insights to all join us. We believe in the power of collaboration, and are accomplished over the 10 years, executing 50-plus events, handing over 800 school supply kits, and giving out over 300 turkeys through our Thanksgiving food drive. This was not done in an isolated effort. We will celebrate the night with everyone within the community, and we hope that everyone comes out. All this information can be found on our website at www.iambeacon.org, on our social medias, Facebook, /IamBeacon, or on Instagram at i.am.beacon. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa Kraft.
Good evening. Wish I could remember all of this too. Thank you. Last week, the Planning Board held a workshop presenting the city's natural resource inventory, compiled by the Conservation Advisory Committee with input by Hudson River Estuary and the DEC. The two most important words weaved throughout the document and presentation were green and open space. The same two words that are typically missing in every application and resolution coming before the council and its boards. To put another nail in our coffin, that presentation was followed by 7 separate public hearings to fill what's left of the green and open space. Granted, one was postponed. Hopefully that developer realizes they can't cram their oversized entertainment venue onto a parcel the size of a postage stamp without being a burden on their next-door neighbors and the entire community. This city was founded with the natural landscape viewsheds and historic overlay districts in mind. However, it seems today, it's the last thing focused on when we should be focused on the protection of our irreplaceable assets in actions and not just talk. I was one of the large group of residents who spoke out against the developer's project on Highland Avenue to alter the quality of life for a quiet residential neighborhood by subdividing a small parcel to fit 5 homes where 1 is the norm. This will affect the quality of life for all the surrounding neighbors, children at the elementary school down the hill, and all nearby neighborhoods, including mine. The planning board chairman told these concerned residents to talk to the mayor and to the council, and don't blame him or his board. So here I am asking you why you are not protecting the residents in our neighborhood from the land grab. The council is directly responsible for the future of all of Beacon. Then during the public hearing for Cross Street and Main, there was nothing in the current design proposal that has the aesthetic feel of our historic industrial city. It looks like a shopping mall from the 90s. The applicant's team showed us a glass tower visually covering every inch of the parcel with sidewalk pavement while describing a pitch about saving historic characters. Clearly, their right hand doesn't know what their left hand is doing. As shown, the view entering the city totally changes the character of the historic district. Go back to the certified letter written to the city in May 2021, when the applicant stated his intention was to maintain the integrity of the existing historic district covering the west portion of Main Street, a goal which we cherish. Those words pulled on your heartstrings, but their new project visuals are worth 1,000 words. Don't let it happen. Thank you.
15 seconds.
Thank you. Thomas Wright.
Thomas Wright, Chair of the Greenway Trail Committee. I'm wondering if I can request 5 minutes.
I'm sorry?
Can I request 5 minutes?
Mayor, no. We do have standards that
Fine.
need to be followed.
I wanted to address 2 issues this evening regarding the trails in Beacon. The first relates to the Craig House property, which is currently seeking approval for a hotel and spa development. The issue boils down to whether or not the city desires public access to Fishkill Creek where it passes through the Craig House property. The committee has promoted the access by designated as a priority project for our action plan of June 2020. And when the development came before the planning board earlier this spring, I alerted the mayor of the potential impact of the development on a publicly accessible trail. At the same time, I sent a memo to the planning board describing what the committee was looking for and stating the city's desire to speak with the developer about a trail on their property. The board passed along this request and recommended that they reach out to the committee. At the same time, I encouraged the mayor and the city manager to reach out to the developer to describe the request for public access. Our ask is that for a connection to their proposed walking trail to a publicly accessible future trail at the north side of their property and a connection to the South Avenue at the south side. The reason for this ask is that a connection to both ends of the property would secure access to the largest private parcel between Wolcott and South Avenues and get us a long way towards realizing a continuous trail on the east side of this portion of Fishkill Creek. This is important for 3 reasons. First and most importantly, a trail connection provides access to a key asset of the city, Fishkill Creek. This was the single most important motivation behind the Fishkill Creek Greenway and Heritage Trail, and the reason we have the Greenway Trail Committee. It's the reason that the city adopted the Fishkill Creek Greenway and Heritage Trail Master Plan, and the reason the Fishkill Creek Zoning District requires developers to build and maintain the Greenway Trail. The request for a publicly accessible trail at Craig House is no different. It states the city's desire for public access to Fishkill Creek for all to enjoy. Second, trails improve as their connectivity improves both in length and breadth. Third, the second largest parcel along this stretch of the creek is owned by the city of Beacon. I've walked it with Councilmember Amar Blair and Director of the Recreation Department, Mark Price. This parcel would make a great park. It is incredibly scenic and offers a range of topography for a variety of possible uses. As a bonus, another city-owned parcel connects it to the larger property to Phillip Street and a neighborhood that needs a park. The developer reached out directly to me in mid-August to discuss our ask. He offered to meet with me and the engineer after Labor Day. When I followed up about this, he called and said that he had a meeting with the mayor and city administrator to inform them that they would not be offering a publicly accessible trail connection. I asked him if we could keep this open for discussion, which he reluctantly agreed to. At this point, does the council desire public access for this parcel? If so, what do you recommend as next steps, given that the developer has expressed its desire to not have public access for this property? I'll email the rest of the comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Daniel Aubrey?
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, City Council.
Is this on one of the public hearings? Or is it a general comment?
No, it's not general. It's on the ADU.
Oh, then can you just wait?
Sure.
We'll get to that. Yep, sorry. Sorry, I didn't read your check marks. Okay. So again, we're still in the general comments, and this is everyone who's on the list. Does anyone in the audience here want to make a general public comment before our 3 hearings? And if not, can we see if there's anyone online who wishes to do that?
If you're on Zoom and you'd like to make a comment, please use the raise hand option at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're on a phone, you may press *9, and you'll need to press *6 to unmute once called on. If you're watching on YouTube, you will need to join the Zoom by visiting beaconny.gov. Mayor, right now, we have one hand raised on Zoom.
Just a minute. I just want to clarify, Ben, that if your comment is about accessory apartments, self-storage parking requirements, or off-street parking in non-residential districts, can you hold your remarks and just wait till we open those public hearings? If you still have a general remark you'd like to make, please, we're here to listen to you. Okay?
Sorry for interrupting you, Mr. Mayor. Scott Lehrman is the only hand raised at the moment.
Okay.
Mr. Lehrman, you can speak now if it's general public comment.
Thank you. It is. I'll speak later on the other issue. Thank you for the time. I just wanted to comment. You heard from Jody and Teresa, but I'm sure the council, like I do, has listened to the planning board meetings. And it was really striking in the last meeting. John Gunn was telling the people at the meeting that again and again that the board couldn't do things, that we didn't understand, that it was very frustrating that people say stop this or stop that. And I do appreciate that. 2 suggestions. One is that all of the city meetings would benefit from a short discussion of what is possible and not, and what the purview of the board is. And the other is that clearly, as we heard earlier this evening, it's time for the city council to go back through the planning issues that have been coming up and where we're failing, where the law doesn't actually support the planning or the zoning board or the council to do what is right in terms of the development in Beacon. Because there are some striking failures that are on the way, because the law, while it is much better than it used to be, still doesn't anticipate many of the situations that are coming up. So I do request that there be some really disciplined look at what are the issues that still exist and how we have defined ourselves so that the laws can do better at making sure that Beacon stays Beacon. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with a general comment online before we turn to our public hearings?
Not at this point.
Okay. All right. So let's do public hearings. We've got 3. I'll need a motion to open a public hearing concerning accessory apartments.
Motion.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
And I guess we didn't open it. I guess we opened after continuing, or whatever the right terminology is. And I'd just like to clarify between when we had the public hearing the last time and we continued it until this time, there have been 2 changes to the law that we've incorporated after workshop. And Nick or John, if you could summarize what those 2 changes are.
Absolutely, Mayor. Thank you. Good evening. So this is the public hearing on accessory apartments, and when this public hearing was last held, the City Council was waiting for comments back from the County Planning Department. This has been workshopped on a number of occasions as well as prior to the public hearing. The City's Planning Board has provided 2 review memorandums in June and July, and the item with respect to being heard tonight is really to amend the city's accessory dwelling local law, which was first adopted in 1989. And before I speak to the county comments, we just generally describe it. It would eliminate the special permit requirement, eliminate site plan requirements for accessory units, apartments rather, that are located entirely within the existing home, provide some size adjustments, limitations, removes the inspection and renewal requirements, and also add some additional language regarding conversions of existing accessory structures into dwelling units. The 2 comments from the county were discussed at last week's workshop and are the changes that are reflected in the revised local law that is subject of tonight's public hearing and included in the agenda packet. The county had 2 comments, the first of which was to consider whether the 50% of the principal dwelling size requirement was necessary, because the county noted that 85% of the roughly 3,000 single-family homes lit in the zoning districts in the village are under 2,000 square feet. So the county suggested rather than have a 50%, just put in a requirement that the maximum size of no more than 1,000 square feet. The council discussed that at the workshop, and a consensus was in favor of adopting and following the county's recommendation, and we were authorized to make that change to the law, which we've done so. The second comment from the county was to consider updating this August 1st, 1989 time limit. So the August 1st, 1989 time limit recognizes that there are existing accessory units or structures on the property, and for those that are larger than 1,000 square feet, that if they were existing prior to 1989, then they could be allowed to be converted into accessory dwelling units, notwithstanding that they're greater than 1,000 square feet. The county noted that since the adoption of the law in 1989, which was the trigger for that inclusion of that 1989 time limitation, that the law should be updated to reflect there being additional potentially accessory structures constructed, and if those went through site plan and were approved, then it would be appropriate for those to be considered for accessory apartments. And so the law was revised consistent with that suggestion to remove the 1989 time limit, but rather just provided that a 5-year time period. So as long as a certificate of occupancy had been issued for an accessory structure greater than 1,000 square feet prior to 1989, or prior to 5 years, then that accessory structure could be used for an accessory apartment. And that was also approved by a consensus of the council and incorporated in today's revision. So this is just a continuation of the prior public hearing. I know Mayor did call for a motion to open the public hearing. I don't recall we had a second. Traditionally, though, we don't do motions to open a public hearing because they have been duly adjourned or scheduled or noted. So no action is required to open the hearing. This is a duly noted public hearing that has been opened by being placed on your agenda and us discussing the item. We just need a motion to close or adjourn.
Okay. All right, given those two changes, one concerning the maximum size and the other concerning the use of an accessory building older than a certain period, let's receive any further comments on this. And if I'm looking at the list, yeah?
Mayor, can I just throw in one up? There was a third change.
Oh, thank you, John.
Just for clarity's sake on the provision about parking requirements, we just put in there for an accessory apartment so that it was clear that the parking waiver could only apply to the requirement for accessory apartment, not for the single-family home.
Okay.
It was just when I read it the last time, I said, boy, you know, somebody could misinterpret that, or it just seemed adding those three words helps clarify what exactly is meant by the sentence.
Okay, so you're saying that the existing home has a parking requirement, but the accessory unit does not, right?
Yes.
Got
So
it.
existing single-family home would still have a parking requirement. The planning board has the right to waive if there's conditions that they think are appropriate to waive the additional third space for the accessory apartment.
Okay. All right, so given that, let's open up. I'm just going down the list of those who signed up, and I do have Stowe Boyd on that one.
Once again, thanks for having me. I'm going to be brief. I'm simply supporting the efforts of the city to move aggressively towards allowing accessory dwelling units. The research I've done in the past, I've written about this a lot, suggests the great majority of the benefit of such units is general to the community in that it does lead to lower cost apartments. And that the great majority of ADUs are likely to be applied towards family members. The granny apartment metaphor is not just a metaphor. It's very commonly the case that an ADU is set up with the intention of housing family members. And that is the general case. However, the really interesting thing about ADUs, which I guess John and Chris wrote about in their respective notes, which are part of the agenda, is that it's a very fast way to very quickly create low-cost apartments in a community where otherwise it might take a long time. If you go through the traditional route of finding a developer who wants to build mixed-use apartments and maybe 10% of them would be affordable or below market rates, that can take years. And yes, we should be doing that too, but in the meantime, dramatically increasing the number of ADUs is going to be beneficial to the city as a whole and to the families who are likely to take direct advantage of that. So I'm just a strong advocate, and I think we should move ahead as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Jody McCredo.
Guys, please don't do this. This is literally the exact opposite of what the city should be doing right now. I know that you've all campaigned. I know that you've all knocked on doors and spoken to people. Overwhelmingly, the biggest thing that people in the city of Beacon have been able to agree on is that development is out of control, that we're covering up all of our green space, and that we need to calm down on things. This is not appropriate for a city this size. I grew up in a 33-story building that had 12 apartments on each floor surrounded by similar buildings. We had sidewalks, we had a bike path where kids could safely ride their bikes. We don't have that here. And we're just building and building and building over every square inch of property, and I've said this many times and I'm gonna say it again, the only thing that this is doing to help make Beacon more affordable is it's making people not want to live here anymore. And people are leaving in droves because they are either getting priced out or they just hate what Beacon is becoming. I love this city, but it breaks my heart every time I come into it because I really hate what it's becoming. And we really need to stop doing this. And unfortunately, I just lost my train of thought. But, oh, that's what I was gonna say. This is a law for rich people. It just is. You have to own property and then have enough additional money to be able to build this unit, which is incredibly expensive right now. So yeah, rich people might be able to have a whole separate apartment for their grandmother or a college student or whatever, whereas other people might have them live in a basement or an attic. Then, you know, that doesn't last forever. Then they have that unit there. Once it's built, it's there. That's it. We have absolutely no handle on Airbnb. There is a national housing crisis, and it is about rich people and corporations buying up real estate to rent it out either long-term or short-term for maximum profits, and that is what is happening all over the city. And you can hire consultants, but we all know that we have no handle on the Airbnb issue. So putting into the law it can't be used for an Airbnb is fantastic, except we've had laws against unregulated Airbnbs for years, and I am still constantly hearing stories about people that have been getting kicked out of their homes that are now Airbnbs, and the city is unable to do anything about it. Our building department is overwhelmed. It's about to be more overwhelmed because the head of it is about to retire. We are not going to be able to, bless you, we are not going to be able to handle this. We are not going to be able to sustain it. It is a horrible, horrible idea for the city. And I also just have to say, because I ran out of time, thank you so much, Ren. Your ward meeting on Saturday was fantastic. I really appreciated it. And thank you so much for watching the planning board meeting and proactively reaching out to me and my neighbors. We really, really appreciated that. It meant a lot to us. Thanks.
Thank you. Clark Kevman on accessory units.
Yeah, I just sent the council, I think, a scattergram of white, black, Hispanic, Asian, Native Hawaiian, whatever, dots per 150 people. It's a fascinating little map. Okay, I got that there's a market niche for affordable housing, and we have a need to try to make it in a single-family house for grandma. The question is, who will protect grandma? The hot plate? The microwave on a circuit that doesn't accommodate that secondary kitchen that no one ever anticipated? Without public inspection, without public requirements, without public thought as to, well, then will the building have, every bedroom have a smoke detector? Should they be hardwired? There are costs, as was stated, and that's the whole point. You can't go to a bank to borrow the money to make the accessory apartment. You can't use the income from the accessory apartment and say, hey, bank, I'm getting $1,500 a month for this, or whatever. Use it as credit because I want to borrow money to whatever. No. You don't get that. Two-family houses are two-family houses, and that's how the bank finances it. So to bring it back now to a full circle about, okay, so let's just say it's not affordable housing, but it's immediate, maybe we can make it safe, but are you taking inventory? Is there an inspection fee? The whole idea is what is the totality of the dynamic you're creating, and do you have it covered in this document? I don't think so. So it's not that you shouldn't come to a conclusion, but I think you should redouble your efforts and have some experts actually sit down to a small committee of the council, public meeting, and just do some homework, you know, for like 6 or 8 hours, video, you know, just absorb all the potential and then ask yourselves questions as to, well, where does this fit and how does it work? How is it more predictable? Is it predictable enough if the council, if the planning board is going to identify uniformly or arbitrarily who can get car parking and who can't and under what condition? Well, what's wrong with a sketch and a map that shows what conditions are good? Why are you empowering arbitrariness when people who are making an investment, they have to think about an architect and how much it will cost, and they got to spend $1,000 to do that to find out, oh, I'm sorry, you don't have enough parking. The lay forth the clarity that your minds can construct for the minutia. Because the heart is nice, but the brain, you know, the facts, the words that cobble together public policy. And you're just not quite right. You're just not quite there. And I don't think it's a bad thing, accessory per se, and I don't think it's a bad thing, except one thing. It negates the need, the market pressure for the second family, for the expansion. With 3,000, I don't know how many single-family houses in the city, and maybe it sounds a little crazy, but as far as I'm concerned, from my perspective, you add a legal apartment anywhere in this city and it's $100,000 to the value of the land. And by the way, what are you doing? Did the family gets the accessory, gets grandma, mom, or they pay grandma, or a stranger pays the family a $12,000 a year? Does that go on the taxes? No. Does it get collected? Is there? I mean, it's worth $12,000 a year. It's worth $100,000 in market value. I mean, did the assessment go up? So there's every single category discussion, and these are complex. But has it been an attempt? Has it been an open community forum? Has it been like a charrette that kind of explores the issues and cobbles together public opinion to a kind of a compromise that makes sense for the entire community? The purpose of city government, as far as I'm concerned, in this day and age, in Beacon right now, should be, okay, to enhance the generational wealth of the landholders in this city, whether you like it or not. Okay? Property ownership and investment and toil that comes with that
15 seconds.
is an American heritage. And New York State desperately needs to increase its capital productive capacity. And Beacon is the shining star of the Hudson Valley, and you need to step up to your rank, size, responsibility.
Thank you. Teresa Kraft.
Everywhere you look, every parcel of land is being turned into high-rise development, new housing, subdivisions, and now a potential floodgate of ADUs. This is causing our population to grow and develop on practically every open space of land that once attracted people to the city. Unfortunately, council tends to lean in favor of growth and development when the majority of Beacon residents want it to stop. Even when members of the council call it out, they're talked over. Overall growth and development is important to a point. However, the city of Beacon has hit that point. When you detract from what made people come to Beacon in the first place, you might have to reconsider what's best for the entire city. I think the best investment this city can make is to force these investors to scale back these projects. It's time for another building moratorium that includes a ban on separate ADU outbuildings. It seems even the legal counsel had to talk slowly tonight in discussing the ADUs. There's a fine line. Freestanding ADUs should be designated differently than secondary apartments located inside an existing building. There is a thin line in your use of accessory apartments and ADUs built on the property in addition to that main house. But every home must not be a multifamily home. We all know that developers will flock to Beacon and buy up homes, wait 2 years, and build out every parcel to the max. Long-term residents did not buy their homes to live in your utopia. Many residents remember the devastation of urban development in the 60s. This is the same scenario delivered in a different envelope. This will push out existing residents. I ask the city to not allow the freestanding ADUs. Think about it.
Thank you. Daniel Aubrey.
I was listening to Jody and Teresa and wondering if we live in the same place. Beacon is tiny, 4.9 square miles. It's entirely surrounded by Fishkill. Of that area, a huge percentage is non-taxable land, churches, parks, etc. And it's wonderful that we have that. but the alternative to ADUs is to raise real estate taxes. There is no other. You have no choice but to increase density in a responsible, intelligent manner. The ADUs do exactly that. They take a surface of an area of land that is underutilized and make it available for housing, which is drastically needed. Right now, there is I happen to be a real estate broker. There is absolutely no rental inventory available in Beacon. It's dribs and drabs. There's people who want to come to Beacon, who are drawn to Beacon, who would help to increase the quality of life in Beacon, can't come here because there's simply no place for them to go. I very strongly encourage you to approve ADUs. Thank you.
Anyone else in the physical meeting want to speak on the topic of accessory apartments who has not spoken? Okay, and then Ben, let's go see if there's anyone online who wants to speak on this topic.
Yes, we have 2 hands raised at the moment. First speaker will be Arthur Kamens. Mr. Kamens, if you'd like to speak, you can go ahead.
Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I appreciate stated affordability intent at the beginning of tonight's resolution. However, I remain unconvinced that additional ADUs will advance that goal with only market conditions as the driver. Of course, smaller units are cheaper than larger ones, but cheaper does not translate necessarily into affordable. Given the continuing hot housing market in Beacon, there is no reason to believe they will be affordable to low and middle income folks. In fact, we have seen that renters used to exorbitant New York City rents are willing to pay still excessive rents for small units in Beacon. The people who own the homes that this may take place in will charge what the market will bear, regardless of the City Council's affordability intent. In addition, the proportion of Beacon homeowners with disposable income to invest in the upfront cost of ADUs is indeed very limited. So it will not likely provide additional income to those already cost burdened. Money from New York State is by no means assured at this time. I urge you to table tonight's vote in order to investigate a legally workable amendment to the proposed regulation that ensures affordable rents that are no more than 30% of family income as a condition of approval. That obligation should continue with the sale of the property along with owner occupancy. So, for example, if in fact someone builds an ADU for an elderly parent or whatever, eventually that person is going to pass away. And so the affordability part needs to travel and stay with the apartment. I want to add that I think this can only strengthen the intent of the law. And if there's any objection that says, well, no, it'll weaken it, that implies that in fact the affordability portion of it isn't workable. So I see no reason why you cannot table this resolution for the evening in order, and continue it to another meeting, in order to consider this proposal. Any objection to that, to me, of that affordability is in fact the intent. So again, I urge you to vote no on this, or not vote no, but to table it in order to consider an affordability requirement as a condition of an additional accessory dwelling. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next speaker is Scott Lerman. Mr. Lerman, go ahead.
Good evening, and a couple of thoughts going through my mind as I listen to people, because I appreciate the issues of density, of affordability. But I also appreciate that this law, which has been, I think, crafted to remove some of the cost and complexity to something that's unnecessary, allows for the possibility of some additional ADUs, which for many families becomes both a lifesaver for family members, a way to help to afford their rising taxes and other expenses in Beacon, and has other uses. So affordability, Arthur, I think, is only one of the things that we get from this. We will also get people who will make some money from this, where they will be able to maintain their lifestyle in Beacon. That being said, I think we should all be cognizant of the fact that the Dutchess County Housing Report, as well as other things from the council, have been clear that the occupancy of houses in Beacon are dropping over time, that there are far fewer people in the houses that we have. We have room for more people. I think we need to be innovative and find strategies like this, which give us a little more housing and a little more density in some places. It's good for the city. It's not going to be perfect. It isn't going to solve all of our problems. But I think we need to, again, consider the effect of some of the laws we have passed, which may make people very hesitant to have people renting in their homes when they may not be able to ever get them to leave. We are doing rent control, which has been pushed out from other communities by legal challenges, and we get challenged here. So I think the council needs to take a multi-pronged approach, and if this helps in some aspects of affordability, that is a great thing, but it isn't the only benefit of these kinds of laws. So I think we all need to be patient, be willing to try some of these strategies, and give the council a chance to work on some additional, perhaps more important strategies for affordability, like using city land as a way to help to subsidize the building of housing that has far more affordable units in them. Thank you.
Thank you. Others?
No more hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. Can I entertain a motion to close this public hearing?
Is it possible, this is maybe a legal question, first of all, to have a discussion about what we as a council want as our next steps generally before we decide on whether or not we want to close the public hearing?
That is permissible. I'm sorry, Nick, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you.
Okay. It's interesting because typically on your motion to adjourn, you would have that discussion. So I'm not sure if you're envisioning a more detailed, substantive conversation or just one procedurally to gauge interest in either adjourning it so that to allow that discussion to occur or to close it and then have discussion afterwards.
Yeah, maybe I can pose a question to the council to see if based on what they've heard tonight, and for the public's benefit, we've also received some emails directly to us about the topic of ADUs, to see if there are people sitting on council who's making them think differently about the law and how it's currently crafted, which means we would want to keep it open if we're going to keep working on it, which is separate from whether or not we vote on it tonight or wait to workshop to just make sure that the law that we have it now is as we want it. So I think if the former, if we do think there are things that we individually want to substantially change, I do not, I will say first and foremost for myself, but if others do, then I would want to keep it open, just as tonight we did have some changes for people to give feedback on. So that's my specific question before we then vote on whether or not we want to close it. If we're not considering substantive changes, just whether or not we want to pass it at all, then I'm fine to close.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is I think that it works to do the other one too, is let's say we close the public hearing. If we vote it in, then it's done. If we vote it down, then it's done. If we make changes that are considered substantive, we'd have to reopen other public hearings. So I think those options remain open to us.
But we would have that discussion when we were about to prepare to either vote or not on the resolution itself.
Mm-hmm.
I think it makes sense to just close the public hearing, and if we make substantive changes, we open a new public hearing.
Okay, great.
Is there a motion?
Motion then to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Are all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, one down. Next public hearing is on the ever deep topic of self-storage parking requirements. I'll need a motion to open that public hearing in a second.
You don't need a motion to open.
Oh.
That's what Nick was
It was
saying.
open before?
No, you're continuing a public hearing that was already set up, right? No, Nick?
Well, you're scheduling, we've already, no motion is needed because you've scheduled a notice as public hearing. So the only motion that would ever be a motion not to convene it is to cancel it or adjourn it. And you've never done this before. Because you provided notice to the public, it's deemed to be open when you call it on the agenda. So no formal motion needed.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand when you first explained it. You're saying it's not just the ones that are continued, but every public hearing, once it's noticed, is basically open.
That is correct, when you reach it on the agenda. The only motion that would be required is if you wanted to close, not open it up and cancel it or adjourn it to a different date.
All right, sorry. So, the second public hearing regarding self-storage parking requirements has been opened. If, Nick, you could explain what the self-storage parking requirement changes would be?
I can. So this is a law to amend Chapter 223 regarding self-storage parking requirements. This came about because a review of the code indicated that there was a definition for warehousing and that self-storage facilities are different than warehousing. This was discussed by a property owner at a council workshop and explained in the materials of the agenda package. And a traffic study was provided and reviewed by the city council and the city planner that demonstrated that other municipalities had different, lesser requirements for parking. And it was also established from a study of the specific self-storage facility in Beacon that overparking was resulting as a result of the village and the city's current code requirements. So a proposal was set forth and referred to the planning board in the county to amend the self-storage parking requirements. The county responded it was a matter of local concern and took no position. And the city planning board said they were in support of the proposed changes. And essentially it's just modifying the definitions so that warehouse storage still requires one space per employee and one space per 1,000 square feet of gross floor space. And a new definition of self-storage facility was provided, and an off-street parking requirement for a self-storage facility provided that is one space per 10,000 square feet of gross floor space plus one space per employee. And again, this is all based upon a review of other municipal regulations of self-storage parking facilities and a report from a traffic committee.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone like to speak on our proposed changes on self-storage parking requirements? I see two people on the sign-up sheet. One is Clark Gebman.
So, I don't know how many self-storage spots there are in Beacon. I think of one, but I don't know of any other. So the question comes up as to the propriety of spot zoning. And I'm not particularly troubled by the proposal per se, but I just don't know of many, and I remember seeing the presentation. It seemed to me that the presentation was pretty well centered on the lost Colossus. And this would be the second time in a month the council had an opportunity to take a deep breath and ask the seminal environmental question that should have been asked for the last 40 years in Beacon. What is the status of industrial damage to the city in the way of pollution? And two, what is the logical, appropriate steps this council takes when a property colossus comes in front of it to which there is a similar question? I recognize that this question has to do with spot zoning. But it's not just spot zoning. It's criminal zoning. I don't believe the city government has the right to defer questions of public pollution to the planning board. It is an abdication of oath of office and of your sworn duty. And then to be advised on this very matter by the Texaco attorney who's handling the disposition, or during the preponderance of time as advising this council, for simply put, a decade, has acted as counsel to Texaco in California on behalf of the pollution in the town of Fishkill.
I'm sure this relates to self-storage.
It does. In all due respect, Mr. Mayor, I titled the question about spot zoning, and I'm merely talking about the motives behind the arbitrariness of what happens when you find yourself in spots to specialize the zoning. The mayor, the people, and the leadership in Detroit who didn't have the courage to deal with the lead issue are not entirely different than this council tonight. And I would suggest the council table this and have all further discussion of that colossus, frozen, building the bridge, all, until such time if there's an independent title search and that there are legal opinions drafted as to the city's responsibility for the dam and the toxins behind it, and also for the water pollution that exists in the town of Fishkill that may or may not be seeping into the city of Beacon.
Public hearing? Or
yes, Mr. White.
Mayor?
I will not be interrupted, Mr. White. We're talking about spot zoning and motivation.
We have a public hearing.
We're talking about spot zoning and the motivation.
Hang on, okay? We can't have too many people talking at once. I have asked you once before to just stay on the topic of self-storage. So
we talked about spot zoning.
Stay on the topic.
You're on a rant, is what you're on.
So, stay on this topic.
I think at this moment he should be fired, but that's beside the point. Now, moving on, okay? You see, it's about accommodations. Real estate is about accommodations.
15 seconds.
And when you have accommodations you can't defend, you need to use your intelligence and say, wait a minute, in my heart, is this what I'm properly going to, is this what my children would want me to be proud of me for? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, just a point of clarification, because the speaker raised an issue about this being about spot zoning. He is mistaken. This has nothing to do about spot zoning. This law does not deal with the use of the property. It's already a permitted use as a self-storage facility. This merely has to do with amending the text of the zoning code to reduce and modify the existing off-street parking requirement for a self-storage facility. It has absolutely nothing to do with spot zoning.
So I will just remind everyone, this hearing is about self-storage parking requirements. I appreciate the city attorney's remarks. And, you know, I recognize people would like to speak and address the council, but this hearing is for that purpose. If we could just restrict our comments, I will do my best to allow it, but at some points I'll put some limits on it.
And there's another opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the reminder. I appreciate it. And again, I'm very reluctant to use the gavel. It's not my preference. The next person on this list is Teresa Kraft, and it's on self-storage parking requirements.
Thank you. I think this came up with the new build-out at the lofts at Beacon on Front Street. There's a storage unit there. Regarding self-storage parking requirements, I hope that by bringing this amendment to the table does not mean there are other potential self-storage units on the drawing board and in discussion for a build-out with the city administrator. Many times we hear developers say, right here at this podium, that they've had the city's blessings from the start when they brought their plan to the welcome table. In addition, I'd like to ask why both the public hearing and the local laws and resolutions are on the same agenda when the public has been told repeatedly that this does not happen on the same meeting night. Looking at tonight's agenda, it certainly does. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the physical public in the building want to speak in the public hearing on self-storage parking requirements? Okay. Ben, can you see if there's anyone online who wishes to speak on self-storage parking requirements?
No hands raised.
Okay. Is there a motion to do something with this hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing regarding this change in the law around self-storage units parking.
Okay.
Second.
So Molly and Dan, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
I'm opposed.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So anyone opposed? Just want to be clear.
No.
One. Okay.
Yeah, I have some questions still.
Okay. Well, we can take up questions in the debate, and if
Okay.
we make substantive changes, we can always come back. All right. Third one is a public hearing on off-street parking adjacent to non-residential districts. So, Nick, if you could explain it, since the hearing is open.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is an amendment to reinstate a provision to the city code, which was inadvertently removed when the code was previously amended, when the city was going through its table of permitted uses and dimensional regulations. A change was made whereby what was previously permitted was inadvertently removed. And the item that was removed was a provision that allowed off-street parking to be located within a residential district, provided that off-street parking was located within a certain distance from the lot that it would serve. Otherwise, if this provision were not allowed, applicants might seek variances or from the parking requirement go to the zoning board. So this provision exists to allow off-street parking to be provided, recognizing it's within a certain area of a residential in a residential district. And so this was sent to the county and to the city planning board. The county recognized it was a matter of local concern, and the city planning board reviewed it and said they were in support of this modification to the city code. And this has been previously workshopped with the city council.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. In the in-person sign-up sheet, there is Clark Geppen, who wishes to speak on the topic of off-street parking adjacent to non-residential districts.
So, the bifurcation of parking responsibility to two different legal entities most recently reared its ugly head in the question of the adjacent property to the old Citizens Bank, where in one proposal, the first, the large apartment house opposite the post office was determined to have a certain number of spots. And then those spots, I think, had a contractual relationship that wasn't paid. The flim-flam came when the Citizens Bank comes in for the application. Oh, well, we severed our relationship, to which bonus apartments were granted to the apartment house because you didn't pay rent. Contrivance. It's obviously a contrivance. Then those very same parking spots were allowed to count on the Citizens Bank application. Again, you get the trend. This little flim-flammy kind of exercise of ambiguity to be awarded to friends and not to foe. It is the blessings of government in small town, but it's also the bane. So anything that promotes winners and losers, and codified, even worse, encouraged, is a set of confusion to which I can't discern that the city generates any real benefit. If you have property, you either pay for the parking or you don't. I mean, you know, you either produce it with the volume of apartments or you don't. Or you know, but to allow the construction of new buildings predicated on different ownership structures, you've already had the bad example. And now you've encouraged it, now you're going to codify it. Oh, it worked. Somebody got what they needed. I mean, forget about how many inches on the city sidewalk he took. And we allowed him to. And the overhead, forget about, it's still there, but whatever. So what I'm saying is, if you're making rules, make them for everyone. Make them so that you're not encouraging corruption, ambiguity, or bad choices. Ambiguity is the enemy of cost containment in all construction and real estate opportunities. It is the featherbed of classic American corruption. So it is up to the council to avoid ambiguities in special cases and all that, to allow for a dictionary, a compendium of what you can and can't do in a community that is under huge economic pressure to the extent that you cannot comprehend. So in the end, when we have these kinds of changes and subtleties and everything else, the first thing I always say, well, who benefits? You know, where are the properties that benefit by this? What's really going on here? Get a handle on it, and then understand, well, are there opportunities where this could occur for property owners that could assemble and to encourage? Yes, but you change the legal entities. They have every opportunity to put it up under one LLC and combine the lots and forever guarantee that the real spaces are going to be there. I apologize for being so contentious, but there is nothing I've said tonight that is not the truth, number one, and number two, a relevant issue, a difficult issue in the area of real estate and management from the city or government perspective. These are tough issues. They're not simple, but you have to adopt the education and the standards, raise the standards of your review. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your service.
Anyone else in the out in the public in the physical meeting want to speak on this topic?
I'll just be brief.
Oh, right. Yes, thank you, Teresa.
I'll just say that I agree there is a confusion with the revision. Parking is at a premium. Parking with projects is a major issue, and letting some projects have no parking waivers is pretty ludicrous. Do not vote the addition, even if it was an oversight. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else physically? Anyone in the on the electronic version of the meeting?
No hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
I will entertain a motion on this public hearing.
Motion to close.
From George.
Second.
Second from Dan. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Reports. Why don't we start up with the council? I don't know, what side you want to start up on? Dan, you want to start this time? Thanks.
All right, so Ward 4. So I didn't have a chance to say this a couple weeks ago because I missed a meeting, but just want to congratulate all the parents, teachers, and children on back to school, and I hope everybody has a great year. I also want to just say that I am supportive of the plan to put a sidewalk on Sargent Avenue leading to the Sargent School. If the school district is also agreeable to it. A few parents have raised this issue to me. The last I had heard about it a couple of years ago, speaking to the previous city administrator, it was something that couldn't be done, and I might have misunderstood it, but I think it's a great idea. We need more safe pathways to school, and we should look at Sargent, and we should also take a look at Forrestal. I would also like to see if we can soon get an update on our Airbnb data and what happened with the software that we purchased by way of the county contract, so we can get a handle on our numbers and understand it better. I also want to follow up on George's question a couple meetings ago about subdivisions and what we can do to look at subdivisions, particularly in the context of some of the public outcry right now. I think there is an argument to be made that parts of town are getting a little too congested. And then last for me, I just want to share that I'll be restarting my office hours for Ward 4 on third Sundays. That'll be October 16th is the next meeting from 10 to 12, and we'll be scheduling a Ward 4 meeting in November. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks to everyone who showed up for the Ward 3 meeting on Saturday. It was great to hear from everyone. Most of the concerns that were mentioned and have been forwarded to the mayor and city council were about traffic and safety. And as I work through those with the city administrator and the different departments responsible, the Traffic and Safety Committee, I'll get back to everyone on your questions. Thanks again for coming. The biggest topic, the most emotionally charged, was the planning board meeting and the development on North Highland, Anderson, and Grove, the subdivision proposal. And I'll just say that I strongly prefer that the planning board exercise discretion on a case-by-case basis. I do think that the public comment is there for a reason, and I'd like our boards and committees to have a say in what happens. That's, I guess, all I have to say about that. And I'll just pass a diploma. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Ren, and thank you for hosting that ward meeting and allowing other council members to come. I learned a lot and appreciated you holding that space and people coming and speaking. I'll just say thank you to everyone who has spoken tonight, and thank you to everyone who speaks at public comments here and wherever. I always learn something and appreciate your participation. We're only a city if everyone civically participates. And so thank you, everyone who does. And looking forward to Spirit of Beacon Day on Sunday.
Good evening. I'd like to thank Councilperson Wren for the meeting on Saturday. I think the form that it took, the informal nature of it, allowed a lot of people to have an honest dialogue, and issues came up that, unfortunately, this is the way we run things, but some people are intimidated by the cameras and the microphones and so on. So it really is nice to have an opportunity to speak to constituents just sitting around a circle. So thanks for putting that together. I thought it was really constructive. And I also just want to thank everyone that's bending over backwards to make Spirit Baking Day happen this Sunday. It hasn't happened in 2 years. So it'll be a welcome celebration. I hope for good weather, but really appreciate all the efforts that went in by the new committee this year, and all those in the past as well. So hopefully see you on Sunday. Thanks.
Saturday, September 24th, this upcoming Saturday at 7 o'clock, Fairground is hosting their Nourish Our Neighbors shindig at the Howland Cultural Center. I hope I get a chance to see some of y'all there. They do a lot of amazing food justice work in our community, and with that, I will also ask if you can, please consider supporting our community fridges here in Beacon. We have two. One is behind Pinnacle Books at 321 Main Street, and the other one is at our recreation center at 23 West Center Street. They get emptied as fast as they get filled, so if you have the means, the opportunity, please support and help feed our neighbors in whatever ways we can. As everyone else has already mentioned, this Sunday, September 25th, is the Spirit of Beacon Day parade, and I really just want to give a shout out and thanks to everybody that has put in so much work to making this happen. I'm really looking forward to seeing the city show up and being there and celebrating with all of you. Monday, September 26th, Dutchess County is doing monkeypox vaccinations in Poughkeepsie, and you can see if you are eligible and sign up for an appointment at dutchessny.gov/DCBH. That is D as in Dutchess, C as in county or community, B as in behavioral, and H as in health. Again, dutchessny.gov/DCBH to see if you're eligible for your monkeypox vaccination and potentially get that. I also want to give a special thanks and shout out to the Howland Cultural Center and artist Donna Mickelson, who is in the Howland Public Library as well, celebrating 150 years. And I can't forget the Beacon Historical Society as well. There are so many people to thank, but the 150-year celebration of the Howland is up at the Cultural Center until Sunday the 25th, Spirit of Beacon Day. That's the last day to come and check it out, so I encourage everybody to do so because it is an excellent exhibit. Please take the City of Beacon's recreation survey. If you go to the city's website, beaconny.gov, at the very top there's a red banner. You can't miss it. It's right under the URL. Click that and you can participate in the future of recreation and parks in our city. And I really just want to give a special thanks and I'm full of gratitude today, if you guys hadn't noticed. I want to thank everybody that participates in government and people who come up to speak and tell us their concerns and what's going on, because before I was on council, before I started in January with more than half of the people here, I was coming up every week as a community organizer and activist, and I know it was annoying a few people at this table, but I know how intimidating it can be and how anxiety-inducing it can be to come up to talk about what's going on that side of the podium. And so I really want to just thank people and encourage people to come up and talk about to let us know what's going on in the city, and let people know that there's more than one way to reach me as well. This is a fantastic way to do it. You can also schedule a meeting with me at really any time. If you see me on the street, at the train station, really anywhere out and about, please feel free to stop me. I'm happy to talk. I'm happy to schedule a phone call, meet with you. I want to know what's going on, and I want to make sure that the people in this city are heard. And lastly, I'm almost done. I just want to thank all of the Beacon City employees for everything that they do. I see them out all the time, and I'm proud of the workforce that the city has fostered and the amazing work that's being done here. So, just thank you.
Well, that's actually a great segue into the heart of my Ward 1 report, which is about the mayor and I were out on Sunday for an hour collecting trash. So for those who don't know, that Sunday is the one day currently that we do not have an active professional, either a contractor or city employees, out collecting trash. We recently implemented having trash pickup on Saturday, because also, as most of you might know, that as you've seen at Main Street is the busiest over the weekends, but that's not traditionally when our staff work. And I am pleased to report that overall that actually there were very few incidences. We were going around kind of clearing out the overflow of trash. You weren't emptying them completely. And there were only a few locations that we found where there was still an overflow issue that we had to address. This was about noon on Sunday, so I think the addition of the Saturday service is overall working really well. There's still issues with trash getting stuck sort of inside the grates, but I know that there's some new formats being piloted or piloted soon, so that might also address that. So I think I can share, I think the spot of Cross and Main Street continues to be our worst offender. It was actually interesting to see that there were 2 trash cans right outside the farmer's market, which was going strong, and those were fine. People missed the trash can, but the actual trash cans were fine. So there might be some locations that need more trash cans. And also the east corner of Main and Teller, that trash can too outside there kind of tends to get there. So that was kind of interesting to see. And I also noticed that as we went around and cleared out stuff, there were a lot of pizza boxes, which tend to fill up our current design, and was wondering, as I know that our city programming, which I appreciate is still a pilot, accepts pizza boxes, so I'm wondering if there might be an opportunity to pilot having a pizza box specific compost container on Main Street. Just an idea that I throw out there that actually one of the businesses themselves seems to try to be doing on their own. So I'm wondering if there's a chance to partner with what CAC is already doing so well, and see if that's something that could work. So I just kind of commend generally the great work that our city administrator and the staff of the city are doing to clean up all of our, and keep our Main Street beautiful. Another quick thing that I'm thinking about is kind of connected to here is a housing conversation, and I know we talk about the percentage of affordable units that already exist in Beacon. So I'm feeling motivated on my own, based on information that's already been shared, to kind of dig in a little more specifically about what those units are. Some of them are senior, some of them are run by the federal government, so just kind of understanding how that mix currently works as we think about not just the potential for ADUs, but other forms of housing we want to add in. I think that would be really helpful for me. So I say this publicly, if anyone has any energy around this, and to give Chris notice, I might be coming to him with questions. And that's it. I will pass it to the mayor.
Sure. I'm going to be saying what Justice said, which is, it's just all going to be thank yous, you know. I kind of view my job as doing that as often as I can in terms of city employees, and I also think it makes a difference, so I think you're absolutely right. And I think our city employees do an amazing job. On Main Street in trash cans, that was actually fun. I tend to shy away from council office hours because I kind of feel like if the mayor turns up, they're all going to bug him, and it's really about you and your constituents. But I was happy to do the Main Street one. That was fun, right? Our constituents were trash cans, and right. Yeah, you described it well. We ended up with 4 trash bags, pretty full. We weren't trying to empty anything. We were just trying to deal with overflow. Molly brought gloves. That was better than my doing. We won't describe where the mayor put the trash bags afterwards, but there is a...
Found them in the river.
Yeah. There is a one at the firehouse, so I kind of figured out by the end, okay, I could have put it in a city bin. Whatever. I also am grateful for those putting Spirit of Beacon together. I look forward to that. It's been several years, and it's one of the most fun things we do as a community. I thank all the volunteers for that. And then I've got another thank you for the pocket dam. So today there was a council quorum, which we did not conduct any business or discuss any matters of possible voting, but there were 4 of us up there. And we got to turn the crank to close off the pocket dam. So the crank on top of the dam opens and closes the water being released from the pocket dam, and we were closing it so that now that the pocket dam work is done, we will start filling the water up there. And for those who can use a little explanation, it's called the pocket dam because it's in the pocket or alongside Pocket Road, but it's also the small holding pen that we accumulate water and then shunt over to our pipes and bring down to the water treatment plant for purifying. And the one statistic I learned, which was, I thought, amazing, was we were leaking, somewhere in the order of 80 to 100,000 gallons a day at that particular site. The entire pocket dam only holds 200,000 gallons. It's a very small one. And so to lose half of what's in your dam in a day is telling you something about the leak that was going on there. Again, it's not a big number, but it does add up, and that amount of water lost, someone said, was up to a month supply of our water. Yeah, which is pretty amazing. So that work was done. I was very impressed by the work. We also had an opportunity to go up to the Mount Beacon Dam, which feeds the pocket, and to see the work up there and to see what they're doing. They're running well ahead of schedule, and it's just really good stuff. I look forward to us figuring out how to protect our assets from trespassers, but we'll work on that when we get there. And that's all I got. Chris?
I just want to thank those of you who came out to see the Pocket Dam today, and thank you for your ongoing support for the capital projects. As the mayor said, we've been slowly but steadily investing in critical infrastructure, and you can really see it starting to pay dividends. Towards that, I also wanted to report that we are replacing the sewer on Hannah Lane, and later this week we'll be moving into Fishkill Avenue. We do apologize, there will be some traffic issues during that time, and we'll try to minimize those and get the work done quickly. That work is being done in advance of redoing all of Fishkill Avenue and Teller Avenue next year. And milling and paving of our other roads is going to begin in early October. I hope to have a more precise list and schedule for you in the next week or two. We're just trying to confirm the availability of the contractors that work with us on that. So that is still coming, and we have a long list of roads that we're going to be kind of upgrading. Thanks.
All right. Let's start up local laws and resolutions. There are 4 items plus the ever-appearing minutes approval. So the first one is a resolution, and it's requesting the governor to sign State Bill Assembly 7389C and Senate 6486D. Those 2 bills, which were approved by the legislature, restrict the use of power, is designed to reduce the use of power for supporting cryptocurrencies in New York State. I'll look for a motion in a second, and if anyone wants to explain it further, you can.
Motion. Second.
So Justice and Dan. Is that a good enough description, Nick? I think so, right? That sounds like a yes.
Yes, that is correct. That's correct.
Okay. Any discussion on this one? Again, it is a resolution asking the governor to sign a piece of legislation that's already been approved. Any comments? Okay. I will comment that this particular area of payments is an amazingly wasteful process. It uses just vast amount of power for the purpose of creating a limited number of coins or currency to be used in crypto trading. It just doesn't make any sense at all. All right. So all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Second one is resolution number 120. It concerns accessory apartments, and that's the simplifying of the process for applying for accessory apartments that are on our books today. Can I get a motion and a second for this resolution? Motion.
Second.
George and Ren. Let's open up discussion.
I guess I might as well start. In general, I'm in favor of this. I mean, everything I have read, both expert studies, planning that's been done in municipalities throughout the country, studies on sustainability, affordability, they all cite Airbnbs as having potential impact, not a solution to it. to the problem of affordable
mean
accessory
ADUs?
units. What did I say? Oh, yeah, accessory units. But that's going to lead me into my other thing. So in general, and that's why I favor it, and I really appreciate the arguments that were presented contrary to that this evening as well, though. But my biggest concern is what mechanisms we have in place in this law that will truly safeguard these units from either being used as Airbnbs or the possibility of future down the line that they not be owner occupied. So if, so those two things are the biggest concern I have. When they change hands, how much monitoring goes on, what kind of mechanisms are in place to keep that from happening.
So I can talk to the one because I was around for the original law. So the original law, which I don't think we're proposing to change, does require owner occupied and does require, it was a biennial inspection. I don't know if we're conforming that to the inspection associated with any rental unit. Could you confirm that, John or Nick, that how the inspection works?
John, I don't know if you've had more discussions. It does remove a requirement for renewal inspections. I don't recall, I wasn't involved in any discussions if it required inspections in the multifamily unit or not by the building department.
Yeah, my impression is that law says any rental unit requires an inspection, but again, I defer, John, you know more detail.
I believe it's any non-owner occupied unit. John, you there? Okay.
So
I'll look that up later.
And maybe Nick, also, would there be any restrictions on the deed? Like if these properties were to be sold, could someone possibly sell them as a two-family, unit? Or what, is there deed restrictions on it? Or how clear is that?
There's no deed restrictions, but when a property is sold, there would be a search done by the top company for building permits and certificates of occupancy, and those would be examined. And those would then, it would come up at that point, most of the restrictions are within the certificates of occupancy. And there is also language in the code that prohibits this from being used for short-term rental. So if one were, and those complaints were brought to the city's attention and enforcement occurred, then that would be a basis to prohibit that accessory apartment being used as a short-term rental.
Yeah, I believe that we have the wording in there. I just don't know if we have the enforcement mechanisms. That's what I'm mostly concerned with.
If I could, we're working on the enforcement mechanisms. We did subscribe to a service through Granicus to identify these units. We know there are about 120 of them in the city. Our staff are being trained on how to use it. We had to put a lot of information into Granicus's system about who owns what. We basically took the assessment rolls and they had to put it into their system. We're hoping to roll that out shortly. It's also going to coincide with the advent of a new building inspector. Our building inspector is retiring in mid-October. We've actually made an offer of employment to a new building inspector, and I hope to bring that person to executive session next week. So with the new building inspector and this new tool in our toolbox, we hope to rapidly ramp up enforcement of STRs.
And do we feel confident that we have the mechanisms in place to maintain owner occupancy of these units?
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't. We only have 29 ADUs right now in the city, and it hasn't been an issue with people turning them into two families and pretending there isn't a legal requirement to have a license for that.
I've just
approval.
heard sort of offhand some developers are looking into properties, the single-family homes that they're buying, going to flip, and want to turn a garage into a Airbnb and almost a two-family in anticipation so that it sells. So I don't know what mechanism is in place to protect that or not allow that to happen. I mean, I guess they wouldn't be allowed to do that.
They could do it if it's a two-family, but the ADU has a requirement for owner-occupied.
Right.
Yeah, anyone getting a mortgage in that situation, the lender would require an attestation of owner occupancy, just like getting a mortgage, right? And so if you're not going to live there, you'd have to get a commercial mortgage, and again, any title search is going to come up with, it requires owner occupancy. So I think that's the way that in the sale process that would get enforced, because a lender couldn't execute against that, right, wouldn't meet the requirements.
And if we find them having STRs, then we'll pull the approval for the ADU.
And then they would have to shut it down, or it would have
Yeah,
to be enforced.
or they would face a
Penalized,
fine that's daily and goes on for as long as the situation hasn't been remedied.
We have that in writing? Or
That's
just
in your,
what you would-
it's in your code.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
For operating the illegal Airbnb, we have a thing that says we'll take away the ADU approval?
Nick?
Yeah, sorry, Chris, it does not say take away the ADU, but they would not be permitted to use it as a short-term rental. It would then be returned to be an ADU.
But I mean, it would be a violation of the condition of the ADU.
Correct, so it would require correction of that condition, and then the court might impose violations of it. But the correction of the violation would also result in it being returned to a market for rental as an accessory apartment.
Yeah, so they'd have to remedy it one way or another.
Correct.
And if we, with this new system, if somebody takes something off Airbnb, and then it goes back on a few weeks later, we get the whole history. So we can, if we cite them and they take it off, Airbnb and the other 50 sites that are now used for this, we'll see if it pops up again.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the Airbnb issue, but I feel like it's being addressed. And so that satisfies me. And what I like the most about this is that it frees up, and I've said this before, it frees up the planning board time. And, just in light of what we've been hearing this week, it frees up the planning board's time to look with more scrutiny at the site plans and listen more carefully to the public hearings on the the larger scale possible changes to our neighborhoods, and looking at how the water flows and how larger developments affect the look and feel. And like one of the public mentioned, or a couple of the public mentioned earlier, research that household sizes are down, and that in other cities, these ADUs are used for moderate income families who might not otherwise be able to stay. I've seen the same research. So, yeah, I also think that they do make density possible without disposing of the single-family home look and feel that we like of our neighborhoods. And already there are no houses to rent. So I don't think, I wish, as much as I would like to, I don't think that the affordability requirement is equitable. So if we can continue to do the work we're doing to ensure that these don't become short-term rentals, I'm satisfied by this.
Yeah, I just want to add a couple of things. One, these have been legal for 30 years. So it's not like we're doing something that changes the fabric of the community. It's had 30 years at it. A total of less than one per year. I think it's 29, so it might be one a year exactly. That's just not a huge impact in the community. That's less than 1% of our single-family parcels. Our single-family parcels are decreasing in population. If you just, observe the census, somehow we increased by several hundred units the number of multifamilies that we have, and yet our population was the same. And that goes to, Ren's comment that our average household size is declining. Okay, so just apply that to our single-family areas. We haven't imposed any additional zoning in the single-family areas. There haven't been taken away for, large, huge developments. There's some infill, okay, but the actual population for the vast majority of our property meaning the single-family homes, has actually declined, right? And so we're actually losing density in those areas because the average household size is declining. The house isn't any smaller, but the household size is declining, right? And how do you address that? And this is really clear, which is if your house is exactly the same size and the size of the family keeps going down, this is an inevitable option and an appropriate one. It doesn't change the density of the neighborhood. It restores it to where it was a generation ago. So the comment that somehow it's tearing up neighborhoods, I get the concern, but I just think it's sort of an over-the-top argument, and that given the decline in our family sizes, this is an appropriate use of pre-existing single-family homes. I don't think it affects, maybe in another 30 years, maybe another 30, maybe even 2% of our housing stock will go that route. I don't think it's more than that. I do also just want to remark again that I do not think that the people who will take advantage of this are the people who have money. No one splits their house up unless they need the money. And again, I come from a family of immigrants. The only way we could afford to live where we lived in California was to live in rental units and to live in one and rent out the others. I do not think that this is somehow advancing the interests of wealthy homeowners. This is allowing the marginal homeowners to stay in their homes. The original purpose of this law was largely to allow seniors and widows to remain in their own homes because it was too difficult to afford the taxes. I think that will also be the case. The last thing I will point out is no one, absolutely no one, will allow someone who's going to live directly next to them or in their yard or in their home without it being sure that you're comfortable with that person. That is paramount and takes precedence over any amount of rent you can charge. Every person that I know that is a small homeowner or has some situation like this says very clearly, I don't charge the most because I want the person to be someone that I can get along with. So I do not think the market price will be the issue here either. I just want to add those and just to be in support. I'm very respectful of the arguments I've heard, but I'm willing to move forward.
I, too, really respect the arguments about how Beacon is getting too crowded. I don't want to conflate density with congestion. Density is how many people per square mile. And I think what the mayor is saying is accurate, that the density would be, we would be restoring density going backwards. However, the congestion that comes with more people and the more cars, the arguments that are being made against the five-lot subdivision are arguments that could easily be made against ADUs. If you walk around Ward 4, there are streets where you will see cars on both sides of the street, no sidewalks, and children walking and bicycling, trying to get in and out around it. And there's actually 2 times I've had people come to me saying that they couldn't even back out of their driveway because there was cars in the way. So to start adding ADUs to streets, I mean, I know that it's legal already, but we're making it a little easier now. I think that it's going to help some people, and it's people that I've met, people that I've spoken to at their doors, telling me that they, want to move into an ADU and they'll give the big house to their family, or they want to, have their child move back from college and live on the property with them because they can't find a place to live in their hometown. And I know those people, and I've heard them, and I know that it will help them, this law. But I know that this law will do much more harm than it will do than it will help out a handful of people. And namely, that could be at the cost of dangerous congestion on the small streets. And I argue for density and congestion, or higher levels of density towards the center of town and not the entire town. The only way that I can really reconcile this law and support this law is that if we knew for sure that we were creating affordable housing, and we do not. And so I have to vote no on this law.
Others?
I I just want to say that I really don't see this law lending itself to affordability, and I get that in theory, with more stock and smaller units, the idea would be that they're more affordable, and yes, they're not going to cost the same as luxury apartments, but I think this council has seen an ADU that has been priced at $2,500 a month, which is $30,000 a year, which is what I make in a year. And I cannot imagine this law lending itself toward affordability at all. I hear that it's just a piece of the puzzle, and I know that every solution that we're offering, it's not the solution, because there's so many different ways to approach the housing crisis that we are in. But I've heard from so many neighbors, so many people in my ward, outside of my ward, just in my community, in the city, concerned about what ADUs will mean specifically for their neighborhood. And I haven't been convinced that this law, the way that it is, will, one, lend itself to affordability, and two, is what this city needs right now.
I am, I think, most in line with George, and that I think that everything I've read and the studies I've seen tell me that ADUs are something that, in general, are going to help our city. However, my sticking points are around my concerns on enforceability. I would be more comfortable potentially looking at this in, I don't know how much time, but once we know that our Airbnb situation is under control, I know that we've taken steps to that, but I would like to see those borne out. Also, I am okay with the provision that biennial inspections aren't necessarily going to happen, if I'm understanding correctly, because they will be registered rental units, they will still have oversight. But I want our new building inspector to be in place and to assure me of that themselves. And I'm also concerned about the potential for parking variances being put in front of the planning board, since our planning board seems to not be aware that they're allowed to say no to things. And I think those things can potentially be resolved in some amount of time, but I'm not comfortable voting yes on that until those things are true.
Interestingly, for the same reasons that Paloma and I guess George says, that I am comfortable voting yes at this point. I do believe that even if we have some challenges, that there is a plan in place in the city that we can support it, and that it is our role as council members and to continue to ask about it, make sure it is enforced, but we have that power as well. So I would rather have it in place for those people in the community who I also have spoken to, who this will benefit and make it noticeably less cheaper and less time costly as well to build the ADUs that they want for their family members. And so I think, therefore, to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people in our community, and the hope that overall, and with an addition to everything else, that maybe we could do something with affordability, even if not directly, I feel like this is a law in the right direction.
So can I suggest that we keep the issue of enforcement on the table, and that we keep asking the city administrator to kind of give us updates on those? I know the one that we're asking about is on short-term rentals, but also we're in the process of hiring a new building inspector who is being hired on the premise that enforcement is important. So we're sort of hopeful that that will improve the situation, but given I think we should keep asking for those updates, I would propose that we move forward. And if someone has anything else, great, but otherwise let's bring it to a vote.
So I did want to make one clarification on a public comment. Somebody was concerned that good cause eviction would apply to an ADU. It would not, because it will be an owner-occupied building that is less than 4 dwelling units, which I would prefer if it actually did potentially. A friend of mine is facing a 44% increase in her rent currently in a 2-unit building that is owner-occupied. and she'll be leaving Beacon.
Well, any other final remarks? All right, shall we, I don't think we need to do a roll call, so just all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
So I'm hearing 3 nays, 4 yeses. Okay, we good? All right, one down. Thank you. The second item, a third item is a resolution on self-storage parking requirements, and we had that explained to us in the start of the public hearing. And again, it is, we had a requirement. We never had any reason to apply it, and this is the first time to apply it, and it's viewed as excessive in terms of the parking requirement. So this reduces the parking requirement appropriate, at least based on comparisons to what self-storage parking requires elsewhere. Can I get a motion and a second on adopting that?
Motion.
Second. That's Dan and George. Any other discussion?
Yes. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
There you go.
No, I want to know.
I'm confused suddenly about, so we're talking about self-storage, but this is a warehouse. These requirements are being looked at being changed for a space that is a warehouse space. And I just had to take a step back and admit to myself that I am not clear on the unintended consequences of this. I understand it broadly, but when I'm listening to the public talk about it in terms of self-storage units, and you know, I'm thinking of it in terms of it being just for that one development to reduce the parking requirement. I don't know. I'm open to more education on this, but I'm just realizing that the education that I had, however long ago it's been that the site plan came before us, it's not gelling for me right now to vote for this. And I'm so sorry to hold everyone up, but I'm just not clear.
So let me suggest we might be able to get a little advice here. So either Nick or John, if you're still there. My understanding is that the use that we're talking about is limited to self-storage and not other activities. Is that right?
That's correct. So we're defining, creating a off-street parking requirement for a specific definition, a self-storage facility. So it would only apply one space per 10,000 square feet of gross floor space for a self-storage facility, which is defined as an establishment that permits customers to store their own materials in private warehouse space with individual lockable use accessible from outdoor driveways or indoor hallways. So anything that is a warehouse storage, which is defined as an establishment for the storage of products, supplies, and equipment for wholesale distribution, would require the one space per 1,000 square feet, 10 times as many parking spaces. And during the council's work session, there was studies presented over to the particular use in Beacon, as well as other municipal codes where it showed that self-storage facilities, due to the nature of them, people putting stuff in there, making occasional visits, not coming there on a daily basis, trucks not coming in and out like at a warehouse facility, that a reduced parking requirement for off-street parking was the standard and justified here.
So just a follow-up question. At least with respect to uses in Beacon, this would be limited to self-storage. It doesn't apply to warehouse. So for instance, if part of the old Talix facility wanted to be used for some sort of storage, unless it were self-storage, this would not apply to that use.
Correct. This amendment would not reduce what is already required for that use.
All right. And the theory on self-storage was that the nature of it is people put their stuff in there and then go in once in a blue moon, therefore less parking. Is that the theory?
That is, yes, that is what was explained and discussed, yes.
All right. I don't know about the blue moon being supported by, that's an odd data point, odd number, but, infrequently. Okay.
So what are the parking requirements for regular warehouses? Are they greater or less than the self-storage?
They require 10 times as many.
Okay.
Right.
They require one space for every 1,000 square feet, whereas self-storage would be one space for every 10,000 square feet.
Right. And I gather that the theory there is that, as Nick mentioned, that in a warehouse situation, you're not leaving, things there for a long period of time, right? That warehousing is about bringing finished goods to market or getting raw materials into manufacturing and not sort of leaving them there for extended periods of time. Therefore, think about the Gap, right? The Gap facility brings finished goods, a bunch of trucks pull up and move them to the stores, right? So the theory on warehousing is much more frequent interaction with vehicles.
There's also greater employees in a warehouse as opposed to self-storage.
Oh, that's true.
Sitting just at the desk.
Yeah. Right, and the proposal reflects that, right, George? Because it says I need one parking space for the person running the facility, and then I need one per however many thousand square feet of storage, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the council was provided with a letter that we reviewed at the June workshop that went through other municipalities. One had one space for 7,500 square feet, one space for 5,000 square feet, and then there was some comparison provided with respect to the Beacon loss and storage and what their actual experiences are. And there was also some language, some text provided regarding life storage facility in the village of Fishkill, which was about 12 parking spaces for that 15,000 square foot area, or 60,000 square foot area.
I don't know if that helps one council member. It may not, but any other comments or questions or issues that?
I'll just add that I appreciate particularly what Nick just mentioned, the comparison to what other municipalities do around this helped me to feel like this was, that there were others had gone through this and experienced it, and I'm assuming that they would not have those rules if it hadn't worked for them. So there's no reason why Beacon self-storage to me would be any different in its needs.
And then I'll just make one final remark. So if another building were converted to self-storage in Beacon, this would be the parking requirement that would apply to that facility as well as to any existing ones, right?
So this is not spot zoning?
Yeah, exactly, right?
Okay.
Right. Right, anytime this use comes up anywhere, this is the requirement, right? Yeah.
That does remind me one other clarification. Obviously we just can have public hearings and votes in the same night, and that's always been true.
That is correct. There's no legal prohibition from doing so. The council has exercised discretion on voting. You determine your agenda. There's nothing that prohibits you from voting the same night that you close the public hearing.
So sorry for that confusion out in the public, if that wasn't clear.
So then the question is, are we comfortable moving forward with this tonight? So I'm
Yes.
okay.
I am, yes.
I am, yeah. All right, so let's have a vote. All in favor?
Did you have a motion? I'm sorry, I didn't.
We did.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was Dan and George.
Got it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Thank you.
So all in favor of the self-storage parking requirements change, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And anyone abstaining? Okay. The fourth item is also a parking requirement. It's off-street parking adjacent to non-residential districts. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion.
Dan and George again. And again, that was explained to us for the public hearing, and the specific instance is down near the waterfront, but this would apply to any similarly situated lots, right?
This is one maybe similar to Ren that I have some questions about. I'm particularly, and actually I happened to miss the workshop discussion of this when I was on vacation and had the questions there, and actually it aligns to the letter that looks like came in from the county last Friday, which talks about the fact that this would, if I appreciate it was on the books and that it kind of inadvertently got left off, but it would actually apply to over 100 residential parcels that are currently adjacent. I'm assuming most of those are along Main Street, given the size of Main Street as our main commercial district. I don't actually know that, but so I appreciate also that in the case of what I understand of the West Main Street property, that particular residential property is also landlocked. So it makes sense in that kind of thing that, yes, it's a parcel that's zoned as residential, whereas I wouldn't necessarily want that to be opened up to everything. I appreciate this is a special permit that has to go through the planning board, but as we've heard tonight from council members and the public, that there might need to be some more specific clarity about what are the reasons by which we would grant the special permit, and even then I want to game out some future things about how this might play out against what our best intentions are at this moment in time. So that's I would kind of want to table this and bring it back to workshop maybe and get some more thoughts and discussion, but I'm open to others' kind of thoughts about where this is right now.
I was going to bring up the same exact thing, whether we can discuss it now and satisfy it, or bring it back to, because I don't think Keenan Bean has responded to that or to the county planning. So I'd like to get their take on it, and maybe in a more formal discussion and lengthier discussion possibly, because I think there is opportunity for unintended consequences.
Opportunity for what?
Unintended consequences, you know.
So, Nick, maybe you could advise us. My recollection is the old PB zones, which were on either, and maybe John, if you're still there, the old PB zones on either side of Main Street were PB because they were parking business or something, and they were originally set up to allow for parking, for the lots on either side of Main. Is that where we're seeing this sort of being put back in? Help me understand.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to John on this one.
Okay, the original PB district was designed for that, and adjacent properties were sort of in the 1960s envisioned as being parking lots for the business district. When the council switched to the transitional district, you can do that. You can have resident commercial parking on a T district parcel, but it's not the main goal of it. There's a whole mix of uses now in the transitional district. So it's viewed more as an extension of the commercial district and a transition between that and the adjacent residential district. So this doesn't actually apply to the transitional district because that's not considered a residential district under the code. It's considered a non-residential district because it has so many commercial opportunities. So it more applies to the linkage districts and the general business district, and perhaps in some occasions the industrial district. But it gives some flexibility for parcels that don't have enough parking to be able to negotiate with a neighboring vacant lot that is adjoining and could be under common ownership. The one on West Main Street, the party owns both parcels. It's landlocked. He has already drafted easement agreements with both neighbors on both sides because they agree with the option of doing that as parking. So it is by special permit, and the general conditions in the special permit allow the planning board some discretion so that if there's real opposition for neighbors it's not being good for the general neighbor. That's one of the general conditions that is in the section 223-18. The planning board would have the right to say no. So in this case, in West Main Street, where this came up, if we realized that it hadn't been transferred from the pre-2020 code to the current 2020 code, and then the applicant had been advised in 2019 when they started their application that this was in place, and the neighbors do not seem to have a concern, then it would allow the property to be used for that purpose, overflow parking. In other cases, along Main Street, it's not as likely to be used because the transitional district is not considered a residential district.
So thanks, John. So I'm just trying to get a sense of what parcels could be affected by it. I gather, if I'm thinking about the economics right, that if there's a single-family home on it, it's not going to get turned into parking because the single-family home is a much more expensive use. Are we only kind of thinking this will occur for like empty lots or landlocked lots?
Like there is
I think that's most likely, yes, at least empty lots.
Yeah, but like there is a lot on Church Street and Eliza, that I think there was a house there that burnt down.
Yeah.
So theoretically, that could be used as a parking lot.
So that's a good question, John. You know the lot? It's the northwest corner of the T intersection of Church Street and Eliza, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would that be accessible to this, right? It's across the street from the T zone, and it's in an R.
Is it just north of the T district, isn't it?
Yep, it's on the other side of Church Street.
It doesn't, it has to have an adjoining parcel of at least 20 feet. So they have to share it.
Oh.
Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. It has to have a adjoining property line, so across the street would not work. It has to have a adjoining shared property line.
All right, so that would tell me that anything in the T zone, it would not be able to affect the homes on the other side of the street of the T zone.
Yeah.
You sit on Sheridan property line.
I guess my question I have is, you said that if there is a single-family home already on the lot, why would you, as a developer, get rid of that home? And yet, if we have parking requirements and you're putting up a big building, it might actually be true that taking down that single-family home means you meet their parking requirements and can sell those apartments or rent them, whatever it is, for more than you would have otherwise. So it might, this is about the unintended consequences of inadvertently incentivize developers to take down, so that transitional zoning, at least in pockets, could become business or big building, parking, and then the residential zone, which I don't think is our intention. It also means that we have less housing available, even if it's, a handful of homes. These are the questions that I have. The county brought up these 100 parcels, and I'm like, oh. I was like, so I think maybe actually seeing a map would help me to kind of know what we're talking about, to understand the risk of this.
Again, it wouldn't apply to the transitional zone. It would, in theory, it would apply to the linkage to general business, the other sorts. Wherever a commercial zone attaches to a residential zone, and since the transitional zone is not considered a residential zone, it would not affect. For the most part, there may be a few places where residential districts adjoin the CMS district, but they're not a lot. So there's that buffer. The transition zone is a buffer between the more intense development and the residential districts.
I would still also like to see a map. And maybe this is just, I didn't walk the city to clarify this before now myself, and I apologize for that. But I also now have doubts about this.
So let me ask another question, John or Nick, the urgency of the matter?
The only urgency is that the 16 West Main Street has been told that they had this option in 2019, and now they've been told after so many years that they don't have that option. So they're eager to move forward with their proposal at the planning board level.
Right.
The option was to apply it generally, not to that specific parcel, to restore the previous language from the 2019 zoning, for generally speaking. So, it does apply to multiple parcels, not just that one parcel.
I think the council should take all the time that we need to consider an issue regardless of a planning board application, but I also know that if we were to go over some maps and then vote in 2 weeks, we would also be done before the next planning board meeting. So.
Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable. I was thinking, well, if we added the word landlocked to it, we could pass it the way it is and know that we've got lots of time, but why do two laws if you can get it done in 2 weeks, right? So what would we think about tabling this for 2 weeks and letting it go back to workshop? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Is that the proposal?
Yes, I propose that we table this for 2 weeks and bring it back, and with the intention of bringing it back to our next public voting meeting in 2 weeks.
All right.
Do we also want to reopen the public hearing since we won't vote on it until, we might as well let people continue to comment?
I'm not sure we're going to change anything dramatically. Why don't we see if we're going to change anything, and then we can make that call? Is that all right?
Can we make that call in workshop, Nick?
Well, you've already closed the public hearing, so you'd have to renotice it, which you could make at a workshop, and then you would notice it at the next meeting for a meeting in 2 weeks.
Which would put us a month out.
Yes.
On the vote.
Yes.
Yeah, but if anything, we'd be narrowing the scope of this as opposed to expanding it, right?
Right, it all depends on what the nature of the change is.
Yeah.
What you're talking about doesn't seem as though it would be a substantive change required in the open.
Right.
Chris?
I would just wonder if John has the capacity to do that map, because we don't have the in-house skill to do that.
John, is there a way that you can get a handle on the affected parcels, even if it's not a map per se?
I will do my best. I don't have GIS capabilities like the county to do a sort of a digitally created map, but I will, I have zoning maps and I can look at them and see where it might apply.
Hand drawings on napkins are acceptable as well.
I mean, the
John,
county came up with these numbers.
could you just call the planning department? They must have run this to come up with that. Maybe they just have the, they could easily do this on GIS and print off a map.
I will give that an option, yes.
Thank you.
I will say, too, for me, I don't necessarily need to know the actual parcels, but just like literally where in the city, like kind of cluster, like the color-coded things you sometimes done, John, I think just really visualizing what parts of it. If it's not along Main Street, then I'm sitting here going, well, where is this? So I think having that visual would help.
Okay. So all in favor of tabling?
Well, I don't think there was a second there.
Oh, what?
I will motion to table.
I made my motion.
Second? Yeah, so I'm sorry. So Molly and Dan? Okay, we're good now? And so the motion is to table 2 weeks and to take up in workshop. All right,
Yeah.
all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. Minutes. Who wants to propose the approval of the minutes of September 6th?
Motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
Justice and Molly. Now, can we use the words bifurcation or compendium in any of this discussion, or any other big words you want to use? Because it is the minutes, we need to get them right. Corrections, additions, subtractions, commentary?
The minutes are marvelous.
Okay.
I had no notes.
Yeah. We had no phantom votes, so.
I really appreciate everyone checking, actually. And I don't mean to make fun, so. Well, I do mean to make fun,
Yeah,
but
you
not
do.
too much fun. Right? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Second opportunity for public comments. I see no one in the public audience who didn't have a first opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone in the electronic version of our meeting who wishes to make a comment who didn't comment generally before?
No hands raised.
I'll entertain a motion.
Wait, just I have one question about a friend of mine. I just got a text from someone that water is being shut off in some part of Beacon tomorrow. Are you aware of this? Is it just a flush line or
Yes.
something?
No, it's related to the Central Hudson area. It's on East, is it on East Street? Hold on a second. Yeah, but they were given notification last Thursday.
Yeah.
We went door to door. There's going to be a very limited shut-off because we are replacing 2 water valves, and I'm going to find the streets exactly. And we gave people a heads up.
I have the notice in front of me.
Thank you. Can you read that, Ben?
Yes, it will be temporarily shut down on the 20th from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. To do the repairs that Chris was referring to. The streets impacted were notified by Swift calls. They've signed up for that. But also notices were passed around. The streets impacted are Masters Place, Mays Street, Woodall Street, Boyce Street, Falconer Street, and a portion of Washington Ave between Boyce and Spring.
So again, we hope to have the work done in 2 hours. We think it's a 2-hour job, but we put in a larger window just to warn people, you know, it might take us longer than we expect. But it's not a big deal. It basically is switching out 2 valves that we use to shut off the water when we have a break. And right now, those valves aren't working, so there was a water break, and then we had to go out further to shut off valves in other areas. So rather than having a very localized shutdown, we had a much broader shutdown. And what we're trying to do is get that in shape before we do some repaving over there.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Now? And I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
George and Dan, are you sure you want to debate this? We could table it? Are we ready? All in favor?
Aye.
Bye. Thank you all. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, Nick.
I appreciate everyone's participation and patience here. Thank you.
100% justice.